The Velkrath swarm moved like a living shadow across the star-swept void, their bioships pulsing with bioluminescent veins that painted the darkness in sickly greens and purples. Admiral Kexthon stood on the bridge of the flagship Devourers, Maw, his chitinous carapace gleaming under the organic lighting as he watched the final preparations unfold. "The Terran colonies have fallen silent, my lord," hissed his tactical officer, mandibles clicking in anticipation. "Kepler 442b offers no resistance." Kexthon's compound eyes reflected the swarm's terrible beauty. 10,000 bioships bred for one purpose: consumption. Each vessel was a living organism, their hulls capable of self-repair, their weapons feeding on the very energy they destroyed. For 3 centuries, no species had withstood their hunger. "Begin the harvest," he commanded, his voice a sibilant whisper that carried the weight of extinction. The swarm descended upon the Terran research station like locusts upon grain. Plasma tendrils erupted from the bioship's feeding appendages, designed to strip away both metal and flesh with equal efficiency. The station's shields, powered by fusion reactors, held for exactly 47 seconds before collapsing under. The relentless assault. But as the outer hull began to dissolve, something unexpected happened. Deep within the station's core, ancient systems that had slumbered for over a millennium began to stir. Emergency protocols, written in a language that predated the Galactic Confederation, activated with mechanical precision. The research station wasn't just a scientific outpost, it was a museum, a repository of humanity's forgotten wars. Kexthon felt the first tremor of unease as energy readings spiked beyond his instrument's ability to measure. The human structure was transforming, unfolding like a metal flower of death. Armor plating, thick as starship hulls, emerged from hidden compartments. Weapon systems that belonged to an age of warfare his species had never witnessed began to power up with ominous hums. "What are they doing?" his tactical officer chittered, panic creeping into its voice. Before Kexthon could respond, the transformed station spoke. Not through standard communication channels, but through pure electromagnetic broadcast that reached every ship in the swarm simultaneously. "This is the human dreadnought Ragnarok's Edge, Terran Defense Force. Serial classification: Omega 779er. You have engaged a protected human archaeological site. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." The voice was artificial, cold, and carried the weight of absolute authority. Kexthon's research into human history had been extensive, but this designation was unknown to him. The Terrans had been peaceful traders for generations, their military capabilities rated as marginal at best. "Ignore their threats," he commanded, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Continue the harvest. No human weapon has ever—" The words died in his throat as the Ragnarok's Edge opened fire. The first salvo was unlike anything in the Velkrath arsenal. Pure energy beams, concentrated to the point where they warped space-time itself, lanced through the swarm's forward elements. Bioships that had withstood the fury of a dozen species simply ceased to exist. Their living hulls, vaporized at the molecular level, Kexthon watched in horror as 3 centuries of military doctrine crumbled in seconds. The swarm, his unstoppable swarm, was dying, and they had awakened something that should have remained buried in humanity's dark past. The Ragnarok's Edge moved through space with the deliberate grace of a predator that had forgotten neither its purpose nor its hunger. Commander Nixara Voss materialized in the central command matrix, her consciousness downloaded from the ship's memory banks where it had waited for 800 years. "Status report," she commanded, her voice echoing through the neural networks that controlled the dreadnought. "Velkrath bioswarm detected, Commander. Approximately 9,700 remaining vessels after initial engagement. Enemy adaptive capabilities noted. They're attempting to modify their hull composition in real time." Voss smiled, a predatory expression that never reached her cybernetic eyes. She had been chosen for this command not for her compassion, but for her tactical brilliance during the Zandali Purge Wars. The Terran Defense Force had deemed her too dangerous for peacetime service, but perfect for the Long Watch. Begin combat sequence Omega-7. Release the Hellfire Protocol, the Ancient. Dreadnought shuddered as systems that had been dormant for centuries came online. The ship's true nature revealed itself. Not the peaceful exploration vessel it had masqueraded as, but a weapon of mass extinction designed during humanity's darkest hour. Weapon bays opened along the hull like hungry mouths, revealing armaments that defied conventional understanding. Particle accelerators the size of city blocks hummed to life, their magnetic fields so powerful they distorted local space. Fusion reactors, fed by zero-point energy siphons, provided power on a scale that rivaled small stars. Admiral Kexthon watched the transformation with growing dread. His tactical analyses had focused on human merchant vessels and exploration craft, peaceful ships with minimal armament. Nothing in the intelligence reports had prepared him for this. "Deploy the Harvester Swarm," he ordered desperately. "Overwhelm their defenses through sheer numbers." The Velkrath bioships responded with terrifying efficiency. The remaining vessels formed a complex three-dimensional formation, their living hulls beginning to merge and separate in a hypnotic dance of biological warfare. Each ship spawned dozens of smaller organisms, living missiles with rudimentary intelligence, designed to burrow through enemy hulls and consume them from within. Nixara observed the enemy tactics with professional interest. Fascinating. They're using biological warfare principles. Adaptation, evolution, consumption. Very elegant. Shall we adjust our targeting parameters, Commander? Negative. Initiate Hellfire Cascade. Show them why humanity earned the right to sleep. The Ragnarok's Edge unleashed its primary armament, a weapon system that existed at the intersection of physics and nightmare. Hellfire Cascade didn't simply destroy matter. It unraveled the fundamental forces that held it together. The effect began as a small sphere of absolute darkness, no larger than a marble, but it expanded exponentially. The first wave of harvester organisms struck the expanding sphere and simply vanished. Not destroyed, not vaporized, they ceased to exist on a quantum level. The cascade effect spread through the swarm like a virus of annihilation, each contact point spawning new spheres of destruction. Kexthon felt his confidence crumble as he watched his swarm, the product of 3 centuries of biological warfare. Evolution, reduced to constituent atoms. The cascade effect was spreading faster than his ships could retreat, and his tactical computers were registering energy signatures that shouldn't have been possible. "How?" he whispered, his voice lost in the chaos erupting across his bridge, as if in answer to his question. The human dreadnought's communication system activated again. This time, the voice was different, personal, almost conversational. "You asked how we're doing this," Commander Voss said, her words carrying across the void. "The answer is simple. You made the mistake of assuming humanity was peaceful by choice, rather than by necessity. We've been sleeping, Admiral, waiting for someone to give us a reason to remember what we really are." The cascade effect reached the swarm's core formations, and Kexthon's flagship shuddered as reality itself seemed to bend around them. The ancient axiom proved itself once again. In war, the most dangerous enemy is the one you underestimate. Admiral Kexthon's swarm, which had devoured civilizations across 3 sectors, found itself facing a single human vessel that defied every tactical principle they had ever learned. Commander Nixara Voss stood in the neural interface chamber, her consciousness fully integrated with the Ragnarok's Edge. Through the ship's sensors, she could perceive the swarm's desperate attempts at adaptation. Their bioships were evolving in real time, trying to develop resistance to the Hellfire. "Cascade. Impressive," she murmured, watching the organic vessels shift their cellular structure. "They're actually managing to slow the cascade effect. What's their adaptation rate?" Approximately 12% improvement per engagement cycle, Commander, the ship's AI responded. At current rates, they'll achieve cascade resistance in 14 minutes. Voss nodded, unsurprised. The Velkrath hadn't conquered half the galaxy through weakness. But they had made one crucial error. They had given humanity time to prepare. Initiate Phase 2. Deploy the Wraith Swarm. The Ragnarok's edge transformed again, its hull reconfiguring into launch bays that expelled clouds of what appeared to be metallic spores. Each spore was no larger than a human fist, but they moved with purpose, spreading through the battle zone like a plague of steel. Kexthon watched the human countermeasures with growing unease. His bioships were successfully adapting to the cascade weapons, their living hulls developing quantum-resistant membranes. Victory seemed within reach until the first Wraith unit made contact. The metallic spores didn't attack the bioships directly. Instead, they phased through the organic hulls as if they were incorporeal, embedding themselves deep within the vessel's living tissue. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screaming began. The Velkrath bioships were more than vessels. They were living creatures, capable of pain, fear, and suffering. The Wraith units attacked not their physical structure, but their nervous systems, their ability to process information and respond to commands. The great bioships began to convulse, their bioluminescent patterns shifting from purposeful communication to chaotic distress signals. "What are they doing to us?" Kexthon's tactical officer chittered, watching their fleet writhe in apparent agony. "Neurological warfare," Voss explained over the communication channel, her voice carrying academic interest. "Your ships are beautiful examples of biological engineering, but they're still bound by the same neurochemical principles that govern all life. The Wraith units are introducing targeted toxins into their nervous systems, not enough to kill, but enough to cause complete sensory overload. The swarm's perfect coordination crumbled as individual bioships lost the ability to communicate with each other. Some began firing randomly, their weapon systems triggered by pain-induced neural misfires. Others curled into defensive positions, their hulls sealing completely as they tried to protect themselves from an enemy that was already inside them. Kexthon felt his tactical situation deteriorating beyond recovery. The humans had turned his greatest strength, the biological nature of his vessels, into a crippling weakness. But the Velkrath had not conquered the galaxy through surrender. "Activate the convergence protocol," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of absolute desperation. Throughout the swarm, the bioships began to respond to genetic imperatives that overrode their pain. They moved toward each other with mechanical precision, their hulls beginning to merge and fuse. The individual vessels were compromised, but they could still form the ultimate organism, a single massive bioship with the combined firepower of the entire swarm. Voss watched the enemy's final gambit with professional appreciation. They're sacrificing individual ship integrity to create a macroorganism. Elegant solution. What's our estimated completion time? 7 minutes, Commander. The merged entity will have approximately 40 times our firepower and self-repair capabilities that exceed our damage output. Then we'll need to use the Prometheus arsenal. The ship's AI paused, a telling hesitation in a system designed for instantaneous response. "Commander, the Prometheus weapons are classified as genocide-level armaments. Deployment requires—" "I know what they require," Voss interrupted. "And I know why they were built. The Velkrath have given us no choice. They want to see what humanity is truly capable of? Then let them learn why we were exiled to the dark between stars." Deep within the Ragnarok's edge, weapons that had been sealed for nearly a millennium began their final preparations. The ships, hull heated to incandescent temperatures, as power systems designed to crack planets, channeled energy into devices that existed beyond the conventional boundaries of physics. The Velkrath ultimate organism took shape in the void, a massive bioship, nearly 3 kilometers in length, its surface writhing with weapons that pulsed with organic hunger. Kexthon felt his confidence returning as he merged his consciousness with the creature's primitive intelligence. Then the human ship opened fire with the Prometheus arsenal, and reality itself began to scream. The universe held its breath as the Ragnarok's Edge unleashed weapons that had been classified as too dangerous for existence. Commander Nixara Voss felt the familiar weight of ultimate responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was about to demonstrate why humanity had been given a choice between exile and extinction. The Prometheus arsenal didn't fire conventional projectiles or energy beams. Instead, it manipulated the fundamental constants of reality within a localized area of space-time. The effect was subtle at first, a slight distortion in the cosmic background radiation, a barely perceptible shift in the quantum foam that underlies all existence. Admiral Kexthon, now merged with the ultimate organism, felt the change before his instruments could register it. The bioship's massive sensory organs detected fluctuations in the basic forces that held matter together. Gravity became unreliable. The strong nuclear force that bound atoms began to weaken. The electromagnetic spectrum shifted into ranges that burned through organic neural tissue. "What are they doing?" he screamed, his voice echoing through the creature's neural networks. The answer came not from his tactical computers, but from the human commander herself. Voss's voice carried across the void with the weight of scientific inevitability. "We're showing you what your species never learned," she said, her words accompanied by the sound of reality tearing. "The universe has rules, Admiral. Physical, laws that govern everything from quantum mechanics to galactic evolution. Most species accept these limitations. Humanity chose to break them. The ultimate organism began to dissolve, not through conventional damage, but through the gradual failure of the forces that maintained its coherence. Its massive biohull, engineered over centuries of evolution, proved useless against weapons that attacked the concept of existence itself. But Kexthon refused to accept defeat. The Velkrath had faced extinction before, and they had always found a way to survive. Deep within the creature's core, emergency systems activated protocols that predated even their current evolutionary cycle. "Initiate temporal displacement," he commanded, his voice resonating through quantum frequencies that existed outside normal space-time. The ultimate organism began to phase between dimensions, its massive form flickering between states of existence. It was a desperate gambit. Temporal displacement was unpredictable at best and usually fatal, but it was their only chance to escape the reality-warping effects of the Prometheus weapons. Voss observed the enemy's final maneuver with grudging respect. Temporal displacement. They're trying to phase shift outside our weapon's effective range. Clever. Shall we pursue? Commander? Negative. Activate the Chronos directive. The ship's AI processed the command with what could only be described as electronic horror. Commander, the Chronos directive has never been tested in combat conditions. The theoretical models suggest— I know what the models suggest, Voss interrupted. But we're not dealing with theoretical physics anymore. We're dealing with survival. The Ragnarok's Edge began to change once again, but this transformation was different from the previous weapon deployments. The ship's hull became translucent, its internal structure visible as streams of temporal energy. The dreadnought was preparing to follow its enemy into the space between moments. Kexthon felt the ultimate organism successfully phase shift into temporal displacement. For a brief moment, he experienced relief. They had escaped the reality-warping weapons. But his triumph was short-lived as the human ship materialized alongside them in the temporal void. Impossible, he breathed, watching the Ragnarok's Edge maintain perfect formation despite the chaotic nature of displaced time. Nothing can navigate temporal space without understanding the true nature of causality, Voss finished. Your species evolved in normal space-time. You adapted to the universe as it existed. Humanity was forged in the space between stars where the normal rules don't apply. We learned to navigate chaos itself. The temporal void around them began to writhe with possibility. Past and future merged into a single moment of infinite potential. The ultimate organism, despite its massive size and evolutionary perfection, was disoriented by the non-linear nature of temporal space. But the Ragnarok's edge moved through the chaos with practiced ease, its hull configuration adapting to the shifting probabilities of displaced time. Weapons that existed in multiple temporal states simultaneously began to charge, their targeting systems locked onto the confused bioship. "This is your final warning, Admiral," Voss transmitted across the temporal frequencies. "Withdraw your forces from human space. Return to your own territory. Never again threaten a human world." Kexathon felt the weight of absolute defeat settling on his consciousness. The swarm that had taken 3 centuries to build was destroyed. The ultimate organism was trapped in temporal space with no hope of escape, but he was Velkrath. Surrender was not in their genetic code. "We die as we lived," he declared, his voice carrying the pride of a species that had never known defeat. "In the pursuit of consumption. If we cannot devour you, we will ensure that none can." The ultimate organism began to collapse inward, its massive biohull compressing into a quantum singularity. It was a suicide attack that would create a temporal paradox, potentially unraveling local space-time and taking the human ship with it. Voss watched the enemy's final gambit with something approaching admiration. Even in defeat, the Velkrath were magnificent. But humanity had faced extinction too many times to be stopped by noble sacrifices. "Initiate the Omega Protocol," she commanded. "Show them why we were called the architects of impossibility." The temporal void convulsed as 2 impossible forces prepared for their final confrontation. The ultimate organism's collapse into a quantum singularity created ripples in the space-time continuum that threatened to tear reality apart. But humanity had faced the impossible before, and had learned to make it kneel. Commander Nixara Voss felt the familiar clarity that came with absolute crisis. The Omega Protocol was humanity's ultimate fail-safe, designed not just to win wars, but to ensure that humanity's enemies could never again threaten their existence. It was the culmination of everything her species had learned during their exile in the dark between stars. "Omega Protocol activated," the ship's AI announced, its voice carrying new harmonics that resonated across multiple dimensions. "Deploying the Paradox Engine." The Ragnarok's edge began to fragment, its hull separating into thousands of individual components that existed in different temporal states simultaneously. Each fragment became a node in a vast network that spanned past, present, and future. The ship was no longer a single vessel. It was a distributed consciousness existing across all possible timelines. Admiral Kexathon watched in growing horror as the human ship defied every law of physics he had ever learned. His own collapse into a quantum singularity should have been unstoppable, but the humans were somehow containing the effect while simultaneously existing in multiple temporal states. "What are you?" he whispered, his voice echoing across the fracturing. "Dimensions. We are what you made us," Voss replied, her consciousness now distributed across the temporal network. "When you forced us to choose between exile and extinction, you created something that had never existed before, a species that learned to thrive in the spaces between reality." The Paradox Engine reached full deployment, and the nature of the Age conflict fundamentally changed. The battle was no longer being fought in normal spacetime, but across the quantum substrate that underlies all existence. The Ragnarok's edge began to rewrite the fundamental rules of causality within the local area, creating a pocket universe where human will took precedence over physical law. The ultimate organism's quantum collapse found itself caught in a causal loop. Every moment of its destruction was simultaneously the moment of its creation, trapping it in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. Kexathon experienced the horror of dying infinite times while remaining perpetually alive. "Stop this," he pleaded, his consciousness fragmenting under the strain of paradoxical existence. "We surrender. We withdraw. We will never again threaten human space." "Your surrender is noted," Voss replied, her voice carrying the weight of temporal inevitability. "But you have seen too much. You know what humanity is truly capable of. That knowledge cannot be allowed to spread." The paradox engine began its final phase, the causality cascade. The temporal network that had trapped the ultimate organism began to expand, reaching backward through time to the moment when the Velkrath first decided to attack human space. But instead of preventing the attack, the cascade ensured that it would occur exactly as it had, with one crucial difference. "The attack on human space will proceed as planned," Voss explained, her voice echoing across multiple timelines. "But the knowledge of what transpired here, the revelation of humanity's true capabilities, that will be erased from your species' memory. You will remember only that you attacked and were defeated by superior firepower. Nothing more." Kexathon felt his memories beginning to fade, the incredible revelations of the past hours dissolving like dreams upon waking. The Prometheus arsenal, the Chronos directive, the paradox engine, all of it was being edited out of his consciousness, leaving only the simple facts of tactical defeat. "Why?" he managed to ask, clinging to his fading awareness. "Why preserve us at all?" "Because extinction is easy," Voss replied, her image beginning to fade as the temporal networks dissolved. "Teaching is harder. Your species will return to your territory with a healthy respect for human capabilities, but without the knowledge of how those capabilities work. You will remember that humanity is dangerous, but not why, and that fear will keep you from making the same mistake again." The causality cascade reached its conclusion, and reality snapped back to its normal configuration. The ultimate organism found itself intact but defeated, its consciousness restored but edited. The swarm that had once numbered in the thousands was reduced to a few hundred vessels, their biohulls scarred but functional. The Ragnarok's edge reassembled itself in normal space-time, its hull configuration returning to the peaceful appearance of a research station. Commander Voss felt her consciousness settling back into linear time, the weight of temporal omniscience lifting from her shoulders. "Status report," she requested, her voice once again confined to normal audio frequencies. "Causality cascade successful." "Commander, the Velkrath retained tactical memories of the engagement, but no strategic intelligence regarding our capabilities. The timeline has been stabilized, and the paradox has been resolved." Voss nodded, feeling the familiar exhaustion that followed Omega Protocol deployment. The ultimate weapons were effective, but they exacted a toll on those who wielded them. She had aged several years in the space of hours, her consciousness stretched across multiple temporal states. "Open a channel to the Velkrath flagship," she commanded. Admiral Kexathon's image appeared on the communication screen, his compound eyes reflecting confusion and defeat. He remembered the battle, but the details were frustratingly vague. Somehow, his unstoppable swarm had been crushed by a single human vessel using weapons he could not recall. "This is Commander Voss of the Terran vessel Ragnarok's Edge," she said, her voice carrying the authority of absolute victory. "You have been defeated. Withdraw from human space immediately and do not return. If you attempt another attack on human worlds, the consequences will be severe." Kexathon felt a chill run through his chitinous frame. He could not remember the specifics of the battle, but he knew with absolute certainty that humanity possessed weapons beyond his comprehension. The smart thing, the only thing, was to retreat. "Understood," he replied, his voice carrying the weight of species-wide humiliation. The Velkrath withdraw from human space. We will not return. The Velkrath withdrawal was as swift as it was. Comprehensive. Within hours, the bioships that had terrorized 3 sectors of the galaxy were retreating to their home systems, their organic hulls bearing the scars of a defeat they could not fully comprehend. Admiral Kexthon stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching human space recede behind them, and tried to understand what had happened. The tactical records were clear. They had attacked a single human research station and been utterly defeated. But the details remained frustratingly vague. His flagship's bio-neural networks retained fragmented memories of impossible weapons and reality-warping technology, but nothing concrete enough to analyze or counter. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, mandibles clicking nervously, "We're receiving priority communications from the Hive Councils. They're demanding a full report on the engagement." Kexthon's compound eyes reflected the stars that had witnessed his defeat. How could he explain what he could not remember? How could he describe weapons that defied description? "Tell them," he said finally, "that humanity is not what we believed. Tell them that the sleeping giant has awakened, and we must ensure it returns to its slumber." Meanwhile, aboard the Ragnarok's Edge, Commander Nixara Voss stood in the medical bay, submitting to post-engagement evaluations. The temporal displacement had exacted its toll. Her cellular structure showed signs of accelerated aging, and her neural pathways bore the scarring that came from existing in multiple timelines simultaneously. "The damage is within acceptable parameters," Dr. Colleen Morthax reported, her cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the medical scanners. "Full recovery is expected within 6 months. But, Commander, I must ask, was the Omega Protocol truly necessary?" Voss considered the question as she watched the bio-readings normalize. The Omega Protocol was humanity's ultimate weapon precisely because it was too dangerous to use. The temporal paradoxes alone could have unraveled local space-time, and the causality cascade had required perfect precision to avoid creating timeline fractures. The Velkrath weren't just another hostile species, she explained, her voice carrying the weight of necessity. They were an extinction-level threat. Their bioships adapted to every weapon system, every defensive strategy. Conventional warfare would have been a war of attrition that humanity could not win. But to erase their memories, to edit their understanding of the engagement, was mercy, Voss interrupted. The knowledge of what we're truly capable of would have driven them to develop countermeasures. Other species would have allied against us. Humanity would have been forced to choose between genocide and extinction. Dr. Morthax nodded, understanding the terrible mathematics of survival. Humanity had been given that choice once before, during the Zendali Purge Wars. They had chosen exile over annihilation, but the weapons they had created in their desperation had followed them into the dark between stars. "The Terran Council will want a full report," she said, her voice carrying implications that extended beyond medical concerns. "The Terran Council will receive what they always receive," Voss replied. "A sanitized version of events that preserves the illusion of human innocence. They don't need to know about the Prometheus arsenal or the Paradox engine. Some knowledge is too dangerous for democracy." The communication system activated, displaying the image of Chancellor Bexathera, leader of the Terran Council. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Voss could see the questions burning behind her eyes. "Commander Voss," the Chancellor said, her voice carrying the authority of civilian government. "We've received reports of a Velkrath incursion into Sector 7. Can you confirm the situation has been resolved?" "Confirmed, Chancellor. The Velkrath have withdrawn from human space and show no intention of returning. The threat has been neutralized." "And the nature of this neutralization?" Voss smiled, an expression that carried years of carefully maintained secrets. "Superior firepower, Chancellor. The Ragnarok's Edge was equipped with advanced defensive systems. The enemy proved unable to overcome our technological advantages. It was a lie, of course, But it was a lie that preserved the fiction of human civilization, the comfortable belief that humanity was just another species, remarkable only for their ingenuity and determination. The truth, that humanity was a species of weapon builders who had learned to break the universe itself, was too dangerous for public consumption. Chancellor BlackHFY accepted the explanation with the relief of someone who preferred simple answers to complex truths. Excellent work, Commander. The Council will note your service in the official records. After the communication ended, Voss stood alone in the medical bay, contemplating the cost of peace. The BlackHFY would remember their defeat, but not its true nature. They would spread warnings about human military capabilities, but without the specifics that would allow other species to prepare countermeasures. Humanity's secrets would remain buried in the dark between stars, waiting for the next time they were needed. But the price was eternal vigilance. The Ragnarok's edge and ships like it would continue their long watch, hiding in the depths of space, ready to reveal their true nature when humanity's survival was at stake. The weapons that had been built in desperation would remain, carefully, maintained and absolutely secret. Computer, Voss said quietly, update the mission logs. Standard patrol, hostile contact, threat neutralized. Classification, routine. Acknowledged, Commander. All records have been updated. The truth remains sealed. As the ancient dreadnought settled back into its disguise as a research station, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of peace and war, never knowing how close it had come to witnessing the true face of human warfare. The sleeping giant had awakened, demonstrated its power, and returned to its slumber. But the dreams it carried were filled with the memory of Hellfire and the taste of absolute victory. 5 years had passed since the BlackHFY incursion, and the galaxy had settled into a new equilibrium. The bio-swarm that had once threatened entire sectors now patrolled the outer rim of their territory, their aggressive expansion permanently curtailed. But Admiral Kexthon could not forget the taste of defeat, even if he could not remember its flavor. Standing in the organic command center of the Eternal Hunger, his flagship rebuilt from the remnants of the ultimate organism, he studied the intelligence reports from the galactic core. Humanity had become a subject of intense speculation among the major powers. The BlackHFY's defeat had been swift and absolute, but the details remained classified even within their own species. Admiral, his new tactical officer reported, we're receiving diplomatic communications from the Andromedian Commerce Guild. They're proposing a joint research initiative to analyze human military capabilities. Kexthon's mandibles clicked in, what might have been amusement. Tell them what I tell everyone who asks. Humanity possesses advanced defensive technologies. The specifics are classified. End transmission. The truth was more complex and more terrifying. The BlackHFY had conducted extensive research in the years following their defeat, analyzing every fragment of data from the engagement. Their conclusions were unanimous. Humanity possessed weapons that operated beyond the normal boundaries of physics. But the exact nature of those weapons remained a mystery wrapped in temporal paradox. Sir, the tactical officer continued, the science cast has completed their analysis of the battle site. They've found anomalies. Kexthon's compound eyes reflected the bioluminescent displays. Explain. The space where the engagement occurred still shows signs of causality distortion, quantum fluctuations that shouldn't exist, temporal echoes that suggest the battle was fought across multiple timelines simultaneously. The science cast believes humanity may have weaponized the fundamental forces of reality itself. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. If humanity could manipulate causality, if they could fight wars across multiple timelines, then conventional military doctrine was obsolete. The BlackHFY had built their empire on biological adaptation and evolutionary superiority. But evolution was a slow process, and causality was an absolute law. File the report under ultra classification, Kexthon commanded. This information is not to leave this ship. Understood? Understood, Admiral. But, sir, shouldn't the Hive Councils be informed? The Hive Councils will be informed of exactly what they need to know, Kexathon replied. That humanity is dangerous, and that we must never again make the mistake of underestimating them. Nothing more. Meanwhile, in the depths of human space, the Ragnarok's Edge continued its eternal patrol. Commander Naxara Voss had aged well in the years since the engagement, her cybernetic implants maintaining perfect synchronization with the ship's systems. But the weight of carrying humanity's deepest secrets was a burden that showed in her eyes. "Status report," she requested, settling into the neural interface chair that had become her second home. "All systems nominal, Commander. Long-range sensors detect no hostile activity. The Velkrath maintain their territorial boundaries, and their expansion has ceased entirely. The Andromedian Commerce Guild has withdrawn their trade routes from the border regions, and the Crystalline Collective has established a formal non-aggression pact with the Terran Council." Voss nodded, unsurprised by the intelligence. The galaxy had learned to give humanity a wide berth, not because they understood the true nature of human military capability, but because they had learned to fear what they did not understand. Any word from the other Omega-class vessels? The Nemesis Protocol reports routine patrol in Sector 12. The Thanatos Dawn has established overwatch of the Magellanic approaches. The Apocalypse engine remains on standby in the void between. All Long Watch vessels report nominal status. Voss allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The Omega Fleet, humanity's ultimate deterrent, remained hidden throughout the galaxy, disguised as research stations, mining platforms, and deep space observatories. Each vessel carried the same terrible potential as the Ragnarok's Edge, and each was commanded by someone who understood the price of peace. "Commander," the ship's AI interjected, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Terran Command. Classification, absolute." The neural interface chamber sealed itself as quantum. Encryption protocols engaged. Chancellor Bexathera's image materialized, but this time her expression carried the weight of absolute knowledge rather than comfortable ignorance. "Commander Voss," she began, her voice lacking its usual diplomatic polish. "We have a situation. 3 days ago, our deep space monitors detected a massive energy signature from the Andromeda Galaxy. Something is coming, and preliminary analysis suggests it's significantly larger than the Velkrath swarm." Voss felt the familiar chill of impending warfare. "Specifications? Approximately 50,000 vessels moving in perfect formation. They're using some form of hyperspace manipulation that our physicists can barely comprehend. Estimated time to galactic perimeter, 18 months. The numbers were staggering. The Velkrath swarm had numbered 10,000, and they had required the full deployment of Omega-level weapons to stop. 50,000 vessels suggested an enemy that viewed the galaxy itself as prey. "Do we have any intelligence on their intentions?" Voss asked. "They've been broadcasting a single message on all frequencies," the Chancellor replied. "It translates roughly as, 'The harvest begins.' Commander, I need to know, can we stop them?" Voss considered the question with the cold calculation that had made her humanity's ultimate weapon. The Omega Fleet consisted of 12 vessels, each one capable of rewriting local reality. Against 50,000 enemies, even their impossible weapons might not be enough. "We can stop them," she said finally, "but the cost will be significant. If we deploy the full Omega arsenal against an enemy of this magnitude, we won't be able to hide what we are anymore. The galaxy will know that humanity possesses weapons that can break the universe. And if we don't deploy the Omega arsenal, then humanity dies, and the question of secrecy becomes irrelevant." Chancellor Bexathera was silent for a long moment, processing the implications. The careful balance that had preserved human civilization, the comfortable lie that they were just another peaceful species, was about to be shattered by necessity. "Commander," she said finally, "you have authorization to do whatever is necessary to preserve human civilization. Full Omega authorization is granted. May God have mercy on us all." As the transmission ended, Voss felt the weight of species-wide survival settling on her shoulders. The long watch was about to end, and humanity's true nature would be revealed to a galaxy that had grown comfortable with their apparent weakness. "Computer," she commanded, "activate the deep protocol. Send the awakening signal to all Omega-class vessels. The long watch has ended. It's time for the galaxy to learn what humanity really is." Throughout human space, ancient weapons began to stir. The Nemesis protocol abandoned its mining platform disguise, revealing armor that had been forged. In the heart of dying stars, the Thanatos Dawn shed its observatory facade, exposing weapon systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Apocalypse engine emerged from the void between, its hull crackling with energies that predated the birth of galaxies, 12 ships against 50,000. But these were not ordinary ships, and humanity was not an ordinary species. They were the children of exile, the architects of impossibility, the builders of weapons that could make gods weep. As the enemy fleet approached the galactic perimeter, they would learn what every conqueror eventually discovers, that there is always someone stronger, always someone more desperate, always someone willing to pay any price for survival. The galaxy was about to witness the true face of human warfare, and reality itself would never be the same. Admiral Kexthon felt it. First, a disturbance in the cosmic background radiation that made his bioship's sensory organs recoil in instinctive fear. Across Velkrath space, emergency alarms began to sound as their most sensitive instruments detected energy signatures that defied classification. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling with primal terror. "We're detecting massive energy spikes throughout human space. It's like they're waking up something that was never meant to sleep." Kexthon's compound eyes reflected the growing luminescence on his displays. Deep in his genetic memory, racial instincts that had guided the Velkrath through millions of years of evolution were screaming a single word: flee. "Send a message to all Velkrath vessels," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of species-wide survival. "Stay away from human space. Whatever's coming, whatever humanity is preparing to do, we do not want to be anywhere near it. The Omega fleet revealed itself to the galaxy. The illusion of human weakness crumbled like a house of cards. The sleeping giant hadn't just awakened. It had remembered why it had learned to dream of fire. The harvest was coming. But humanity had been preparing for harvesters their entire existence, and they were very, very good at it. In the depths of space, where the light of dying stars illuminates ancient weapons, humanity keeps its long watch. They are the children of impossible wars, the builders of reality-breaking arsenals, the species that chose exile over extinction and turned that exile into strength. They sleep between the moments, dream between the heartbeats, and when threatened, they remind the universe why some sleeping giants should never be awakened. For in the end, every species believes they are the apex predator, until they meet the one that actually is.